When we think of Transformers, the first things that usually come to mind are Michael Bay's endless explosions, or that classic colorful cartoon from the 80s. But somewhere between nostalgia and Hollywood blockbusters, a series emerged that many fans consider the definitive, and perhaps the darkest, take on this war. Enter Transformers Prime. Forget the idea of a silly cartoon where the heroes always walk away without a scratch. This show hits a lot harder. Right from the start, main characters are brutally killed, zombie robots show up straight out of The Walking Dead, and villains like Megatron use forbidden substances to power up. This series didn't hold back. It took the franchise's complex mythology, blended it with animation that's aged like fine wine, and delivered mature storytelling packed with grief, trauma, and real consequences. That's why, today on the channel, the complete story of Transformers Prime. Get ready, because we're about to prove this was never just a toy commercial. Cliffjumper and RC are on a routine chatterbox patrol until Cliff strikes gold, a mine overflowing with energon. Going full Rambo, Cliff decides he doesn't need backup and tries to tank a squad of Viacons solo. Bad move. An explosion sends him flying, and the poor guy is dragged onto the Nemesis, where Starscream cold-bloodedly finishes the job.
Any more questions?
When the rest of the squad, Optimus, Ratchet, Bumblebee, and the team arrive on the scene, all that's left is a broken horn. The atmosphere is somber. RC heads out to clear her head, but is tailed by two Decepticon goons. To lose them, she goes into stealth mode, posing as a parked motorcycle. Enter Jack Darby. The kid spots the bike and, dreaming of being the next Maverick from Top Gun, hops on. The villains spot RC, forcing her to peel out with the boy on her back. The chase turns into a high-stakes, fast and furious sequence on the highway until Bumblebee arrives to provide cover. The skirmish spills into an urban canal where young Raph is playing with an RC car, escalating into a battlefield until the heavy hitter Bulkhead arrives to send the Decepticons packing. Back in HQ, Optimus realizes the kids are now targets and orders a full extraction. RC picks up Jack along with Miko, who tagged along as a stowaway, and Bumblebee grabs Raph. Optimus delivers his solemn "We are autonomous robotic organisms" speech, explaining that their home, Cybertron, is now a wasteland. Meanwhile, in deep space, Megatron makes a triumphant return through a space bridge, ready to raise hell.
Decepticons!
Starscream tries to suck up to the boss by showing off an energon mine, but Megatron is back with major mad scientist vibes. He's obsessed with dark energon, a substance that promises to raise the dead, basically a robotic The Walking Dead. Guess who's the lab rat? The late Cliffjumper. Meanwhile, at the Autobot base, Agent Fowler shows up throwing a tantrum, threatening to call the Pentagon. Optimus manages to talk him down, convincing him they can handle things off the record. Simultaneously, Megatron's experiment works a little too well. Cliffjumper returns as an uncontrollable zombie beast, forcing Megatron to slice him in half. Cliffjumper's life signal blips on the hero's radar, and they rush to the mine thinking they can save their friend. At HQ, Ratchet hits a snag. He can't bypass the encryption, but Raph, the child prodigy, cracks the code in seconds. At the mine, things heat up. Starscream alerts Megatron to the Autobots' arrival, and Megatron orders the place leveled. RC finds the upper half of Cliffjumper in a heartbreaking scene. She tries to help, but her former partner-turned-zombie lunges at her before falling into the abyss. Starscream triggers the charges, and the Autobots escape the blast by a hair through the ground bridge. Back at base, RC is traumatized and falls ill. Ratchet discovers a purple ooze on her. Meanwhile, Megatron decides to go full super soldier and plunges a dark energon shard into his own spark. At the Autobot base, a drop of the substance falls to the floor, transforming a broken tool into a bizarre spider bot. The chaos is just beginning. At the base, things are getting weird. A tool comes to life and attacks Ratchet, looking like a deleted scene from Maximum Overdrive. Optimus destroys it and instantly recognizes the side effects of dark energon. Meanwhile, Megatron, now high on the purple stuff, leaves the ship under Starscream's command to execute his master plan. Optimus and Ratchet head out to investigate an ancient battlefield mangled, leaving the kids at the base. Naturally, the peace doesn't last. Miko starts a guitar solo that irritates Fowler so much, he storms out. Bad move. He's intercepted by Laserbeak, Soundwave's pet drone, who kidnaps the agent in the middle of nowhere. Chaos ensues. Bulkhead heads out to rescue Fowler, but Miko hitches a ride inside him. Jack and Raph, trying to play hero, or just being reckless, use the ground bridge to follow, leaving the base completely empty. Geniuses. Now the three kids and Bulkhead are surrounded near the Decepticon warship. Miles away, Optimus and Ratchet arrive at the robotics cemetery, but Megatron beat them to it. He uses a chunk of dark energon and, in a total thriller meets horror movie vibe, raises an army of undead robots called Terracons to destroy the heroes.
The power of dark energon!
In the robot cemetery, the situation is dire. Megatron's zombie army keeps rising no matter how many times they're shot. Ratchet, using his medical expertise, figures out the secret is dismemberment, the Walking Dead style. It's brutal, but it works. Meanwhile, on the Decepticon ship, it's a free-for-all. Bulkhead smashes his way in, and Miko pops out of his chassis mid-firefight. Jack and Raph are captured by guards, but Bumblebee and RC show up at the 11th hour to save the day. During the scramble, the kids hide on the bridge and find critical data on a monitor. Before escaping, Miko snaps a photo of the screen while Jack saves Raph from a stray blast. The Autobots rescue Fowler from torture, and Starscream flees faster than the Roadrunner as soon as the heavy artillery is pointed at him. On the ground, Optimus and Ratchet finish off the zombies, but Megatron couldn't care less. He claims that was just a warm-up and flies off, leaving the heroes in suspense. Back at base, the mood turns sour. Optimus scolds Bulkhead for putting the children in danger. Jack, realizing he almost became a statistic, decides the hero life is too crazy and quits the team. But then the real bombshell drops. Ratchet analyzes Miko's photo and realizes it's the blueprint for a space bridge. Megatron isn't just making a few zombies here. He's planning to bring an entire undead army straight from Cybertron. Optimus is having visions of the apocalypse, and the situation is critical. Jack rejoins the team just in time for a suicide mission, heading into orbit to stop Megatron. The problem is, the Decepticon ship is blind, thanks to the damage Bulkhead caused earlier, so they have to hack a giant radio telescope in Texas to aim the space bridge at Cybertron. While Optimus leads the orbital assault, the kids infiltrate the Texas facility in a very Stranger Things-esque sequence. The plan was to hack the system, but they run into Soundwave. The Slenderman-esque Decepticon plugs his tentacles into the computer. He locks the coordinates, and Megatron launches the dark energon through the portal. The result? Cybertron turns into a Resident Evil nightmare, with millions of zombie bots ready to invade Earth. The only way out is to blow the bridge. Optimus keeps Megatron occupied in a brutal brawl while RC and Bumblebee sabotage the structure. The explosion is colossal. Megatron is caught in the blast and seemingly turned into stardust. Starscream, of course, can barely hide his smirk at the sudden job opening for Leader and orders a retreat. The Autobots return home victorious, with Optimus delivering a hero speech letting the galaxy know that Earth is under his protection. Starscream decides he's now the Emperor of Destruction, but he has zero charisma, and the troops respect him about as much as Dwight in The Office. To force them into submission, he and Soundwave head to the desert to resurrect Skyquake, a legendary Decepticon warrior buried for centuries. Meanwhile, Ratchet is at the base in full Sheldon Cooper mode, deciding to do the kids' science fair projects because he finds human physics primitive and cute. Optimus and Bumblebee head to the desert to crash the party. The problem is that the newly awakened Skyquake is loyal only to Megatron and refuses to obey Starscream, attacking Optimus in a blind rage. In the middle of the fight, Soundwave detects a signal from the site of the orbital explosion. Megatron survived. Starscream goes to check and finds the boss mangled, kept alive only by the dark energon. He rips the shard out of Megatron's chest, leaving the leader in a coma, alive, but out of the way, to take back to the ship. Back in the desert, Skyquake scans Agent Fowler's fighter jet, and the fight turns into an aerial Top Gun duel. Bumblebee has to pull off an insane maneuver, pitching a ride on Fowler's jet mid-flight to tear the giant apart before he crashes. The villain is turned into scrap. In the end, we find out Ratchet's projects were a total failure at school, proving that alien tech and high school curriculums don't mix. Bulkhead and Bumblebee find a giant popsicle in the Arctic and decide to bring it back to base, which, in a horror movie, is always the worst possible idea. While Optimus and RC head back to the ice for recon, Raph finds a little metal creature that looks like a cute Tamagotchi. But the thing is, a scraplet, a cyber piranha with saw teeth that devours living metal. And that frozen capsule? It was a kinder egg, packed with hundreds of these pests. The situation spirals out of control. The scraplets eat through the wiring and comms, turning the base into an all-you-can-eat buffet. In the Arctic, the temperature plummets and Optimus and RC start freezing like Jack in Titanic, unable to call for help. Ratchet warns that if the cold hits their circuits, it's game over. But he and the other Autobots are cornered by the flying monsters. Ironically, it's up to the kids to save the day since scraplets don't eat human flesh. It's Jack, Raph, and Miko armed with fire extinguishers and crowbars defending giant war machines against mechanical bugs. On the ice, there's a dramatic goodbye between the leaders, holding hands as their batteries die. But at the base, the kids pull off a daring plan. They fix the ground bridge and lure the swarm through. Bulkhead acts as bait, runs into the portal, and leads them into the Arctic, where the thermal shock freezes the bugs instantly. Optimus and RC are saved at the last second. In the end, the bots survive the metal gremlins. But Miko still screams like a toddler when she sees a regular spider. The boring routine of cleaning the base is interrupted when a ship is detected. It's Wheeljack, an old war buddy of Bulkhead's and a member of the Wreckers. However, Soundwave intercepted the signal, and Starscream decides to pull a Mission Impossible move. He sends a shape-shifting imposter named Makeshift in the hero's place. The fake Wheeljack arrives after staging an epic fight with Viacons, gains everyone's trust, and enters the base, while the real one is tied up on the Decepticon ship, serving as Starscream's verbal punching bag. At the welcome party, there's dancing and music, but the fake Wheeljack is desperate to find the base's coordinates. The problem is, he's a terrible conversationalist, and Bulkhead starts getting suspicious. To test him, Bulkhead tells a fake story about an old battle. The imposter falls for the trap, confirming a fight Bulkhead was never in. Exposed, he takes Miko hostage.
Stay back, or I'll squeeze her into pulp.
Meanwhile, on the enemy ship, the real Wheeljack channels his inner John Wick, breaks his cuffs, and just as the portal opens for the imposter to escape, he flies through and tackles his double. We get the classic, "shoot him, I'm the real one" scene, but the original wins easily. Bulkhead tosses the imposter back to Starscream, but with a little parting gift, an activated grenade. The villain blows up in Starscream's face, and the real Wheeljack decides to hit the road again. The lone wolf life is more his style. Agent Fowler recruits the Autobots for an escort mission that feels like something out of the Speed franchise. The cargo is an unstable nuclear device with the ridiculous nickname, the Dingus. Optimus takes the wheel, leaving a frustrated Fowler in the passenger seat, annoyed he can't drive the massive truck. On the road, things take a Mad Max turn, but the surprise isn't the Decepticons, it's humans. A secret military organization called Mech, led by a mysterious man named Silas, attacks the convoy with guerrilla tactics and tuned cars. They want the Dingus to reverse engineer it into their own weapon. Of course, Soundwave was listening in, and Starscream sends Viacons to turn the party into total chaos. In the crossfire, the Autobots pull a Mission Impossible maneuver. They stash the cargo on a moving train while passing through a tunnel, temporarily tricking everyone, but the plan goes south. Optimus takes a beating and falls off a cliff, leaving the kids alone on the train with a nuke. Raph tries to use his hacking skills against Silas's helicopter, but gets hit with a digital counterattack. The villain blows the tracks ahead, turning the train into a death trap. At the last second, Optimus appears and stops the train through sheer brute force, a scene worthy of Peter Parker stopping the subway in Spider-Man 2. Silas escapes, but leaves a message. There are now human villains who use cold logic and tech to challenge the bots. As Optimus puts it, they are Decepticons in human skin. Miko is stuck in detention, but she decides studying isn't for her, and bails with Bulkhead in a Ferris Bueller's Day Off vibe. Bulkhead takes her to Greece to investigate an energy signal, thinking it'll be a quiet field trip, but they run into new faces. We're introduced to Knockout, the Decepticon medic who cares more about his paint job than the war, and Breakdown, a powerhouse with a long-standing long-standing personal grudge against Bulkhead. They discover a local museum holds an energon harvester, an ancient machine capable of draining energy from anything. It turns into a race straight out of National Treasure. The kids come up with a plan to steal the artifact from the museum before the villains. While Optimus is busy trading blows with the dynamic duo outside, the kids try to extract the item, but Soundwave, the Decepticon Employee of the Month, appears out of nowhere, swipes the harvester, and leaves without a word. Starscream takes the new toy to Greece and starts draining energy to test its power. Bulkhead tries to play the stealthy hero, but he's about as subtle as an elephant in a china shop. He's captured, and Starscream uses the machine on him, nearly turning the Autobot into scrap. But the big guy toughens it out, breaks free, and smashes the harvester in a fit of rage.
Breaking things.
Agent Fowler shows up to clean up the mess with museum security, and Miko decides her history essay will be about alien robots in ancient Greece. Good luck explaining that to the teacher without sounding crazy. The episode dives straight into the action with Knockout living his fast and furious dream, ignoring the alien civil war to participate in illegal street races. The problem is, his ego is as big as his chassis, and when a human scratches his paint, the Decepticon snaps and runs the guy off the road. At school, Jack is dealing with Vince, a generic bully who looks like he walked off the set of a John Hughes movie. Vince challenges Jack to a race, and RC, wanting to teach the kid a lesson, accepts and humiliates the bully on the track. The problem is Jack, thinking more about impressing Sierra than global security, wants a rematch. Since RC has common sense and refuses, Jack convinces Raph to borrow Bumblebee. Naturally, it goes sideways. Mid-race, Knockout shows up, recognizes Bumblebee, and chaos erupts. The villain ends up getting confused and kidnaps Vince, thinking he's the Autobot's pet.
Here, right now!
Optimus Prime, who must have been napping nearby, appears in angry truck mode and rips Knockout's door off. In the end, Vince is rescued thinking he had a hallucination, and Jack learns his lesson, mostly, while still managing to give his dream girl a ride home. RC and Jack are on a decidedly non-romantic walk through the forest when they find a crashed ship. The biker starts having Rambo-style war flashbacks, remembering heavy trauma from Cybertron. We learn the ship belongs to Arachnid, a Decepticon with a Black Widow look and a healthy hobby, collecting the heads of rare species, like a cybernetic predator. The villainess goes on the hunt and immediately tries to add a camper to her collection, but RC interferes. Flashbacks reveal this grudge is personal. Arachnid captured and executed RC's old partner, Tailgate, right in front of her. Now, the alien spider decides Jack's head would look great on her trophy wall. RC tells Jack to run, but the boy decides not to be the damsel in distress this time. He channels his inner MacGyver, using a lighter and an energon leak to blow up the villain's ship. This makes Arachnid livid, and just as she's about to turn Jack into a shish kebab, RC arrives with a flying kit. After a beatdown, the villain escapes by burrowing into the ground like a mole. The episode ends with RC finally accepting Jack as a true partner since he proved he's more than just a kidnapping victim. The mood gets heavy when Optimus and Ratchet investigate a ghost ship full of dead Autobots. The problem is, this wasn't an accident. The place is infested with a cybonic plague created by Megatron himself. Optimus ends up infected by a corpse dripping with contaminated energon and ends up on his deathbed, in a situation mirroring pandemic movies like Contagion. The only cure is in the Decepticon database. RC and Bumblebee head out on a stealth mission, but can't find the formula. What Bumblebee does find, however, is Megatron's comatose body. Ratchet, channeling his inner Christopher Nolan, comes up with an Inception-style idea. Patch Bumblebee's mind directly into Megatron's brain to extract the cure from his subconscious. The Scout enters the villain's mind, which is stuck in an infinite loop in Kion, killing imaginary versions of Optimus Prime like a video game. Meanwhile, in the real world, Starscream and Knockout try to convince Soundwave to pull the plug on Megatron for good. Inside the simulation, Bumblebee convinces Megatron to hand over the formula in exchange for mental freedom. Ratchet copies the data, RC cuts the cord at the last second, and may escape before Starscream does something stupid. Optimus is cured, but nobody notices the final plot twist. Megatron's consciousness hitched a ride and is now hosted inside Bumblebee's head. Bumblebee starts acting acting strangely during a basketball game, having visions of Megatron's past. It turns out the Decepticon leader is taking control of the Autobot's body in a full-on Get Out or The Exorcist vibe. Possessed, he discovers he needs Dark Energon to resurrect his original body. Meanwhile, in the Arctic, Starscream puts a classic 007 or Lex Luthor villain plot into motion, melting the glaciers with a giant lens to reach Energon deposits, threatening to flood coastal cities. Zombie Bumblebee wreaks havoc at the base, beats up Ratchet, steals a Dark Energon shard, and uses the ground bridge to head to the North Pole. Ratchet and Wrath follow to save their friend, but Megatron in command is too strong. He boards the Decepticon ship and stabs the crystal into his original body's chest, completing the Frankenstein-style ritual. The real Megatron wakes up furious. Outside, Optimus destroys Starscream's heat weapon in an insane action sequence. When Starscream tries to fly away, the newly resurrected Megatron intercepts the traitor midair and drags him back to the ship for a brutal reckoning. While the Autobots use the distraction to escape, Starscream wakes up in the medbay looking like he was hit by a truck, which, technically, he was. Megatron shows up just to mock him, creating a classic toxic boss atmosphere. This makes Starscream livid, so he rips out his tubes, steals back his piece of Dark Energon, and decides to start his own army. The plan? Resurrect Skyquake, the legendary Decepticon who already kicked the bucket. He goes to the warrior's grave and plunges the crystal into his chest, like an RPG necromancer. The Autobots detect the signal and investigate, but the real mess starts with Miko. She runs for the ground bridge at the wrong time. Jack and Raph go after her, and an energy explosion occurs when Starscream tries to escape through the other side. The result is pure Stranger Things. The kids are trapped in a shadow zone, like the Upside Down, where they can see everything, but no one can see or hear them. The problem is, Skyquake is there too, in zombie form and hungry for destruction. To make matters worse, Starscream lost an arm in the previous battle, and that arm was left in the normal dimension until the kids use it as a weapon. That's right, Jack and Raph use Starscream's severed arm to shoot the zombie. Meanwhile, the real Starscream comes back to look for his missing limb and almost gets caught in the invisible crossfire. In the end, the kids manage to jump through a portal opened by Ratchet, but Skyquake's zombie arm goes with them and slaps Starscream in the face in a hilarious stop hitting yourself moment.
Humans? Where did you vermin?
Miko takes the heat, and Starscream is left empty-handed and down one undead soldier. In Russia, Bulkhead and Breakdown are brawling in a ghost town until Silas and his mech team show up in a chopper and knock out the Decepticon. They kidnap Breakdown not for ransom, but to play Saw, and dissect the bot alive to steal his tech. When Starscream tells the boss about the kidnapping, Megatron acts like the world's worst manager and says, "Let Breakdown rot. Being captured by humans is disgraceful." But Optimus Prime, being the Boy Scout he is, decides they have to rescue the enemy to prevent Silas from getting his hands on Cybertronian bio-secrets. Bulkhead hates the idea of saving his arch-nemesis, but Miko convinces him with the logic that if Breakdown dies on the operating table, Bulkhead loses his chance to beat him up later. The team raids Silas's lab, where Breakdown is already being dismantled like a game of Operation, but without the anesthesia. Bulkhead arrives just in time, frees his rival, and the two have a brief buddy cop moment fighting off the humans, but the joy is short-lived. Starscream arrives with reinforcements and forces Breakdown to choose, kill Bulkhead or betray the Decepticons. Under pressure, Breakdown attacks the guy who just saved his life. Bulkhead, furious, beats the spark out of him and Starscream, forcing the villains to retreat. In the end, Silas lost his guinea pig, but he gathered enough data to start something called Project Chimera, which is never a good sign in sci-fi. Things heat up in the forest when Silas and his mech team, thinking they're big game hunters, fall, literally, into Arachnid's web. The villainous makes a Godfather-style offer. She spares Silas's life in exchange for RC and Jack. Speaking of Jack, he's living every American team's nightmare, grounded by his mom, June, and banned from using his bike. Of course, Silas, using tech from Arachnid's ship, finds out where the boy lives and kidnaps his mother. Jack and RC get the ultimatum and rush to an abandoned factory, the classic action movie finale setting. Upon arrival, we find out Silas has no honor. He hands Jack over to Arachnid and pins RC to an operating table to steal her spark, not in a romantic way. He wants to dissect her alive. While RC wakes up in Hulk mode and starts tossing mech surgeons across the room, Jack rushes to save his mom, who's hanging from a web. The final fight is insane. RC and Arachnid trade blows on the factory ceiling until they fall near a cement truck. With a little help from Jack, the villainess is buried and becomes a statue of quick-dry cement. But the victory is brief. Agent Fowler arrives with air cavalry, but Arachnid breaks free, scans his helicopter, and escapes with a new vehicle mode. At least June was saved, and after seeing giant robots throw down, is finally introduced to the Autobot team. Now that June is in the loop, she decides to become the ultimate helicopter mob, controlling Jack's every move and annoying even the robots. To escape the family sitcom vibe, RC and Bulkhead head out to investigate a magnetic anomaly in the desert, and obviously, Miko tags along. On site, Breakdown is trying to earn his way back into Megatron's good graces and finds a polarity gauntlet, basically a weapon stolen from Magneto's closet in X-Men. Arachnid shows up to steal the toy, and an all-out brawl breaks out. In the confusion, the weapon fires and magnetizes the heroes. RC ends up stuck to Bulkhead's back, turning them into a hilarious, clumsy fusion. The chase continues to an abandoned gas station, with June nagging on the radio the whole time. RC and Bulkhead have to fight while glued together against the two Decepticons. The gauntlet changes hands several times, throwing metal everywhere, knocking down oil rigs, and creating total chaos. In the end, RC manages to use the weapon to repel the enemies. Breakdown flees to the ship, but with an unwanted souvenir. Thanks to the magnetism, Arachnid is stuck to his back. When they show up in front of Megatron looking ridiculous, the Decepticon leader finds the situation hilarious and accepts the spider back onto the team. Back at base, June apologizes for being overbearing, ending the family drama for the day. Instead of hitting an insane metal concert like a normal teen, Miko drags the Autobots to investigate an abandoned mine. Of course, danger follows. Megatron and Starscream arrive shortly after. The Decepticon leader has finally had enough of his deputy's betrayals, and in a Donald Trump-style The Apprentice moment, decides Starscream is fired from life. But before he can finish the job, Jack and RC show up and ruin the moment. In the crossfire, RC triggers a collapse worthy of a disaster movie. The result is total chaos. Jack and RC fall into a pit, Megatron is pinned under a pile of rocks, and Bulkhead has to use all his strength to hold up the ceiling to keep himself and Miko from becoming pancakes. Starscream manages to escape, but realizes that if Megatron dies, he becomes the target of the other Decepticons. Meanwhile, Bulkhead's oxygen is running low. Jack finds a massive mining drill and starts carving a path like in Armageddon. He runs into the immobilized Megatron, who asks to be finished off. But Jack, following Optimus Prime's good guy handbook, decides to spare the villain. That's a lot of nobility for someone facing the Darth Vader of the series. Jack uses the drill to save his friends and even runs over Starscream in the process. The Autobots leave, leaving the villains behind. The episode ends with the most humiliating moment of Starscream's career. He's forced to hold up the massive rock in Bulkhead's place, so Megatron isn't crushed, basically becoming the boss's furniture. Starscream tries to beg for mercy back on the ship, but Megatron sends him on a field mission with Arachnid, the person he hates most. It's like being forced to do a school project with your worst enemy. They head to a crashed ship to recover a weapon, but the spider betrays Starscream, traps him in a web, and goes for the prize alone. The Immobilizer, a scepter that freezes anything, looking like a magical item straight out of Dungeons and Dragons. Optimus, always the soft-hearted leader, thinks they should give Starscream a chance at redemption. But there's no time for philosophy. Arachnid returns with the new toy and turns Bulkhead and Optimus into instant museum statues. Meanwhile, the tensest conversation of the season happens between RC and Starscream. In the heat of the argument, the Decepticon drops a bombshell. He confesses he killed Cliffjumper, thinking RC was talking about a different dead partner. The confusion ends, and RC goes full John Wick. Starscream breaks free and the two start fighting. While RC beats the scrap out of the former commander, Bumblebee proves he's the MVP of the day. He kicks up a dust cloud to trick Arachnid, fakes being frozen, and breaks her weapon when she lowers her guard.
Megatron's eternal trust.
The spider flees, and RC has her blade at Starscream's throat, ready to avenge Cliffjumper. But seeing Bumblebee watching, she decides not to cross that line. In the end, Starscream breaks his cuffs and decides he's done with bosses. He's now a free agent, officially resigning from the Decepticons to cause trouble on his own. Miko and Bulkhead are lounging around, enjoying the robotic equivalent of a Monster Jam rally on the couch. However, Ratchet, the base's official wet blanket, thinks it's a colossal waste of time. The fun is cut short when Optimus Prime calls for backup to retrieve an ancient data cylinder. Miko, far too restless to stay behind and sweep floors, hitches a ride with the big guy by sneaking through the ground bridge. On the battlefield, things spiral out of control. In a desperate attempt to help, Miko kicks the cylinder, but the alien tech interprets the contact as an upload and dumps its entire database directly into Bulkhead's brain. Back at base, the big guy starts acting strange. Suddenly, he pulls a Matt Damon in Good Will Hunting, scrawling complex equations all over the walls. Ratchet discovers these are formulas for synthetic energon, which would be a miracle find if the data weren't literally overwriting Bulkhead's personality to make room on his hard drive. Meanwhile, Megatron realizes the cylinder is empty and sends his lackeys to bring him the Autobot's head, literally. Desperate as she watches her friend forget who he is, Miko takes him to the place he loves most, a monster truck rally. But even the roar of the engines doesn't help. Bulkhead keeps graffitiing formulas in the middle of the track. Knockout and Breakdown show up to ruin the party, and Knockout goes into a hysterics when his paint job gets scuffed. A full-blown brawl ensues, and just as Knockout readies his saw to decapitate Bulkhead, the data surge simply vents into space, leaving the bot in a coma. In the end, it's not Ratchet's science that saves the day, but Miko's loud guitar, bringing the big guy back to life with a heavy rock chord.
I love that song!
Ratchet decides to play Breaking Bad and cooks up an experimental batch of synthetic energon. With the team low on fuel and pinned down in an ambush, the Doctor decides to test the mixture on himself. The result is instantaneous. He goes from a grumpy medic to a mix of Captain America and the Hulk. He arrives on the battlefield flying high, trashes the Decepticons single-handedly, and saves everyone's spark. The problem? The side effects. Back at base, Ratchet is wired, aggressive, and has zero filter. He shoves Bulkhead against a wall, calls Bumblebee weak, and even drops some awkward pickup lines on RC. Addicted to the rush, he injects more of the green stuff and heads out on a field mission, where he tortures a Decepticon miner and tells Optimus to his face that he's soft for never killing Megatron. The robotic midlife crisis peaks when he decides to take on the Decepticon leader one-on-one. Predictably, it goes south. Megatron beats the overclocked medic within an inch of his life. Seeing Ratchet bleeding the green fluid, Knockout collects a sample for analysis. The steroid wears off just as the Autobots arrive for the rescue. A humbled and ashamed Ratchet manages to destroy Knockout's sample flask before retreating. Optimus delivers the classic lecture, and Ratchet promises to settle down. What they don't know is that the vain Knockout managed to lick a single drop of the formula off the floor, guaranteeing future trouble. Optimus Prime, usually the king of stoic leadership and one-liners, starts the day preaching the apocalypse. He cites an ancient prophecy claiming Earth will go to hell as soon as the planets align. It's basically the plot of the movie 2012, just with giant robots. While the kids try to go about their lives with cat memes, Megatron decides to crash the party. He's done with stealth and orders an all-out assault. Amidst the chaos, he spots Bumblebee playing Fast and Furious with Raph and decides to shoot to kill. The result is tragic. Bumblebee is badly damaged and Raph is knocked unconscious, critically injured. This is the breaking point for Optimus. Forget diplomacy and peace talks. The Autobot leader goes full John Wick, hands Bulkhead a weapon, and announces that today is the day Megatron goes to the scrap heap for good. At the base, the tension is palpable. Ratchet realizes being an alien tech genius means nothing when your patient is a dying human boy. Jack's mother June steps in to help, and they discover Wrath has been poisoned by dark energon. The only cure? A transfusion of Bumblebee's energon. Meanwhile, Optimus and Megatron meet at the mouth of an active volcano for the final duel. Optimus is winning, delivering a brutal beating, but the universe conspires against the heroes. The volcano erupts, spewing dark energon. Megatron, a dark energon addict, gets a massive power-up, catches Optimus's blade with one hand, and flips the script, ready to execute the Prime then and there. Megatron prepares the killing blow, but the cavalry arrives at the 11th hour. Bulkhead appears out of nowhere and executes a football-style tackle on the villain, buying time for RC and Ratchet to drag an unconscious Optimus through the ground bridge. They narrowly escape, leaving the Decepticon leader screaming into the volcanic void.
Animate Unicron himself! Yes!
Back at base, June Darby decides she's had enough of this madness. She goes into maximum overprotective mom mode, takes a newly recovered RAF and the other kids, and tries to flee. The problem is, nature itself is revolting. The world begins to collapse under earthquakes and bizarre storms. June's car is caught in a tornado straight out of Twister, and if Bumblebee hadn't shown up to anchor the vehicle to the ground, it would have been game over for the Darbys. June realizes nowhere is safe and returns to base with her tail between her legs. Ratchet analyzes the tremors and discovers the ultimate seasonal plot twist. The sound coming from the center of the Earth is a heartbeat. Earth isn't being invaded. Earth is Unicron, slumbering for eons. The entire planet is just the shell for a god of chaos. Megatron, thinking he's the chosen one, tries to strike a deal with the volcanic entity, but gets brutally rejected. Unicron considers him a mere parasite. Optimus tries to plead for humanity, but the stone giant isn't listening. The Prime destroys a rock avatar of Unicron, thinking the problem is solved, only to realize the scale of the threat when dozens of other stone giants sprout from the ground around him. Optimus Prime has activated one-man army mode, trying to tank Unicron's stone clone solo, but Team Prime completely ignores their leader's orders, because the #1 rule of action cartoons is that the power of friendship trumps military hierarchy. They arrive via ground bridge to help farm the rock golems, delivering the classic "no one gets left behind" speech. Just as things look bleak and a giant is about to finish Optimus, guess who shows up for the kill steal? Megatron. The villain isn't there for tea. He's realized that if Unicron wakes up, there's no Earth left for him to rule. It's time for a forced alliance in the style of Batman and the Joker. Megatron proposes a temporary truce to lead the Autobots to the center of the Earth, where Unicron's brain resides. The situation is so dire they have to bring the Decepticon leader inside the Autobot base.
So, this is where the magic happens. Quaint.
The atmosphere is more tense than a Thanksgiving dinner with the X, with RC glaring daggers at Megatron every second. Meanwhile, on the Decepticon warship, Arachnid begins planting seeds of betrayal, thinking the boss has jumped ship. Before departing on this metallic version of Journey to the Center of the Earth, Optimus pulls Jack aside and hands him a mysterious key, giving a speech that sounds a lot like a final goodbye. He's prepared to sacrifice himself using the matrix of leadership. The team, along with their sketchy new ally, leaps through the portal straight into the planet's core. Megatron warns them. Chaos already knows they're coming. As they descend toward the core, we pause for some heavy lore. Ratchet becomes the substitute history teacher, telling the humans the origin of the whole feud. We learn Optimus wasn't always a heavy-duty truck. He was Orion Pax, an idealistic librarian, basically Clark Kent before the cape. And Megatron? He was Megatronus, a gladiator who wanted revolution. They were Professor X and Magneto, best friends turned mortal enemies over political divides. In the center of the Earth, the mission turns into co-op mode. Optimus and Megatron fight back-to-back against Unicron's drones in choreography that would make any Hollywood director jealous. It's a rare sight, the two leaders synchronized, shredding generic robots while Bulkhead nearly falls into the abyss, saved by Bumblebee at the last second. Up top, on the Nemesis, Arachnid tries to stage a coup, but forgets that messing with Soundwave is a one-way ticket to humiliation. The silent Decepticon doesn't even break a sweat to shame the Spider and prove why he's the MVP of loyalty. Back at the core, it's boss fight time. Unicron tries to possess Megatron, but Optimus decides it's all or nothing. He unleashes the full power of the matrix of leadership into the Chaos God's face. The energy blast puts Unicron back to sleep and saves Earth, but the price is too high. When the dust settles, Optimus stands up with no memory, asking, "Where are we, Megatronus?" He's reset to factory settings, believing he's still the librarian Orion Pax. Megatron, never one to miss an opportunity, leans into the soap opera plot twist, lies that the Autobots are the villains, and takes Optimus with him. The episode ends with Earth's greatest hero now on the villains team, leaving the Autobots and the kids in total shock. We return to a heavy atmosphere at the Autobot base. Without Optimus, the team is more lost than the cast of Lost in its final season. Ratchet confirms the worst. Their leader's hard drive has been wiped, reverting him to Orion Pax, his pacifist archivist self. Meanwhile, on the Nemesis, Megatron is getting a masterclass in manipulation worthy of a true crime documentary. He convinces Orion that the Autobots are the villains and, get this, that Ratchet is a bloodthirsty warlord. Yes, the grumpy medic is now the villain in Megatron's fanfiction. Orion even gets a Decepticon insignia branded on his shoulder and begins work decrypting ancient Iacon files. However, he's too smart for his own good and notices that Starscream, listed as second in command, is missing. Megatron lies, saying he kicked a bucket, but we all know lies have short legs. On Earth, Jack tries to maintain a normal life flipping burgers, but Sierra shows up to complicate the teen romance, followed shortly by RC blowing her "My Mom is a Motorcycle" cover. Speaking of action, a skirmish breaks out at a military base. RC goes full John Wick, invading the enemy ship looking for Optimus. She gets incredibly close, but Soundwave, the ultimate employee of the month, opens a portal and dumps her in the Arctic before Orion can spot his former comrade. The plan now is bold: invade and hijack the Decepticon space bridge to go to Cybertron and find a cure for Optimus. And to top it off, Starscream, who snuck onto the ship just to steal an Energon snack, bumps into Optimus in the hallway. Everyone's jaw is on the floor. The encounter in the ship's corridors is awkward. Starscream levels his missiles, but realizes Orion is more confused than a freshman on his first day and calls himself just an archivist. Before Starscream can manipulate the situation, security arrives and he flies off, taking a shot to the wing as a souvenir. This interaction, however, plants the seed of doubt. Orion ignores his boss's orders and searches for Optimus Prime in the database. He realizes Megatron's story is full of holes, seeing that Optimus was actually the leader of the good guys. At the Autobot base, Ratchet's attempt to overclock the ground bridge ends up exploding one of Raph's toy cars. With no viable options left, the team receives an unexpected call. Starscream himself, leaking oil in the woods, begging for medical aid. Ratchet goes full house, agreeing to stitch up the traitor only in exchange for the space bridge's location. Starscream, left with no choice, gives up the address, Arizona. Because of course, every alien encounter in the US has to happen in the desert. The team invades the Decepticon base Mission Impossible style. Agent Fowler even gets a moment to shine, tricking Breakdown over the radio with the silver tongue of a used car salesman. With the path clear, Jack dons a NASA spacesuit, looking like he's about to film Interstellar, and steps through the portal with RC, bound for Cybertron. Back on the ship, Orion finally hacks the encrypted files and has a total recall moment. He discovers, looking at a photo, that he is Optimus Prime. Megatron realizes the charade is over, and the heat turns up. Meanwhile, on Cybertron, Jack and RC think the planet is deserted, but an Insecticon starts stalking them, turning the rescue mission into a horror movie. Jack and RC are on a perilous tour of Cybertron, guided by the magical key to Vector Sigma. They find the entrance to the planet's supercomputer, but there's a very unfriendly doorman waiting. An Insecticon. It's basically a building-sized armored beetle. While RC tries to tank the monster without much luck, Jack takes advantage of his size and slips into the sacred chamber. On the Decepticon ship, the toxic office environment persists. Megatron pressures Orion Pax, who realizes he's being watched and decides to flip the script, wiping his search history so the boss can't see. The problem is, Megatron isn't stupid and threatens Orion with termination, the permanent kind. Meanwhile, Jack connects the key to Vector Sigma to download the wisdom of the Primes, but the connection is slow and the drama ramps up. A swarm of scraplets wakes up, looking for a fresh metal smack. Jack is cornered between flying piranhas and the Insecticon breaking down the door. In a masterstroke, Jack uses a scraplet as bait, and the monster becomes an all-you-can-eat buffet for the tiny bots. Orion Pax, who is busy getting beaten by guards, accidentally discovers his arms turn into cannons. He realizes that for an archivist, he's pretty lethal. He escapes and heads straight for the space bridge. On Earth, Megatron is thrashing the Autobots when Orion arrives. The former leader tries to talk it out, but ends up in a brawl and takes a beating from the veteran villain. At the last second, Jack delivers the charged key to Orion. His memory returns, the software updates, and boom, Optimus Prime is back online. He turns the tide, teaches Megatron a lesson, and the whole team escapes back to base. The boss is back. The team is back to the grind, hunting relics before Megatron can get them. They track a spark extractor, a weapon that kills any Cybertronian instantly. Megatron gets his hands on it first, but Bumblebee pulls a fast and furious maneuver, snatches the item from the villain's hand, and bails. Point for the Autobots. The joy is short-lived. Bee and Bulkhead go to investigate another signal and fall into a trap set by Mech, those annoying humans led by Silas. They taser Bumblebee and perform an illegal chop shop surgery right there in the woods. By the time Bulkhead arrives, it's too late. They've stolen Bee's T-Cog, the biological component that allows them to transform. Now Bumblebee is stuck in robot mode, which is basically like an Olympic athlete losing their legs. He spirals into a depression at the base while Mech tries to install the part into a Frankenstein robot they've built. Starscream, always looking for an in, shows up and offers technical consulting to Silas in exchange for favors. Ratchet tries to pick up the slack and goes to pick up Raph from school, leading to a super awkward moment since ambulances aren't exactly low profile. Bee can't stand being on the bench and forces himself onto a mission against Knockout, but without the ability to turn into a car, he tries to chase the villain on foot and even ends up driving a beat-up truck like it's GTA. Obviously, it goes wrong. He crashes and nearly totals himself. Things are looking grim for our favorite Yellow Scout. The mood at the base is heavy, feeling like a dramatic episode of Grey's Anatomy. Bumblebee is still T-Cogless, and Ratchet, feeling the guilt, decides to donate his own organ to the kid. Optimus, ever the worried dad, eventually agrees. But before the surgery can start, a relic alarm goes off and the main team has to head out, leaving Bee benched. Meanwhile, Bumblebee intercepts a message from Agent Fowler regarding Mech's location. Fed up with sitting around, he ignores medical orders and goes on a solo mission, channeling his inner Rambo. He invades the human base with brute force, throwing punches and barrels like he's Donkey Kong. He manages to rip the stolen T-Cog out of Mech's Frankenstein bot, but Starscream shows up to ruin the party. In an act of pure malice, the ex-Decepticon explodes the part right in front of Bee. It's heartbreaking. On the other side, Optimus's team is struggling against Knockout's new force field. Megatron arrives to claim the prize, the Forge of Nemesis Prime, a divine hammer that would make Thor jealous. The villain tries to use the weapon, only to discover it has a biometric lock. Only a Prime can activate its full power. Basically, he stole a giant paperweight. Back in the forest, the tables turn on Starscream. Silas and his gang drug the bot and steal his T-Cog. Instant karma is a beautiful thing. Back at base, Ratchet performs a medical miracle and repairs Bee's original gear. Our favorite yellow Camaro is back on the road, transforming and burning rubber once again. Agent Fowler calls in a rage, sounding like a cranky police chief from a cop movie, complaining about a robotic shootout near Omaha. The team discovers the Chaos Maker is Wheeljack, who returned to Earth with the subtlety of an elephant in a china shop. He's hunting Dreadwing, a Decepticon who came to avenge his twin brother, Skyquake. The dynamic is clear. Dreadwing wants blood, and Wheeljack is the Maverick from Top Gun, flying dangerously and blowing up gas stations in the process. Optimus tries to give his teamwork lecture, but Wheeljack prefers the lone wolf style and drags Bulkhead out for a spin. Predictably, it goes south. They fall into a canyon trap and nearly end up as bod pancakes. After being rescued by Prime, the situation escalates to the Hurt Locker levels. Dreadwing straps a bomb to Bulkhead's chest, and Wheeljack tries to defuse it, but the tension is so high that Bulkhead knocks out his friend and runs toward the sea to blow up alone. Optimus, done with the games, settles the matter with sheer brutality. He drops an entire harbor crane on top of Dreadwing. With the villain pinned WWE style, Prime forces him to defuse the bomb. Dreadwing obeys, but like a true dramatic villain, he detonates the rest of the harbor before fleeing. In the end, Wheeljack admits Optimus might know what he's doing, decides to stay on Earth, and finally picks a vehicle mode to blend in, joining the team for good. The vibe on the Nemesis is worse than a condo board meeting. Arachnid tries to sell herself to Megatron, suggesting he use her tracking skills, but the Decepticon leader, tired of her backstabbing, orders Dreadwing to handle the spider. Basically, he puts out a hit on her, mob style. Dreadwing takes Breakdown along, and the two head into the forest for the hunt. But Breakdown, with an ego bigger than his chassis, decides to ignore the warnings and takes on Arachnid alone. Terrible idea. She spins a web, traps the big guy, and slices him up without mercy. It's the end of the line for Breakdown, who dies in a brutal fashion worthy of a slasher movie. To make matters worse, the Met crew shows up afterward to scavenge his parts like like techno-organic vultures. Meanwhile, Starscream is living in squalor in a cave until he finds Arachnid controlling an Insecticon. She proposes a coup against Megatron and challenges the leader to a 1v1. Megatron shows up, and the fight turns into a true WWE match, Gladiator versus Monster. The Decepticon leader takes a beating at first, but shows why he's the boss, dismantling the Beetle with raw strength. The Autobots arrive mid-chaos. RC chases Arachnid through underground tunnels and falls into a trap. Just as the Spider is about to deliver the final blow, guess who saves the biker? Starscream. He fires a missile, frees RC, and says they're even before bolting. Arachnid, defeated but not dead, finds an underground nest full of Insecticons. She's become the alien queen, and now she has an army.
Warrior was merely a scout.
Agent Fowler is driving along, minding his own business, when a familiar truck starts tailgating him duel style. It's Optimus Prime, or at least it looks like him. The truck rams Fowler off the road and tries to kill him. When the real Autobots arrive, we get the classic identity confusion, and RC even gets run over by the imposter. The team grows suspicious of the real Optimus, but he proves he was busy mining Energon elsewhere. Meanwhile, evil Optimus attacks a military base, blows everything up, and screams his name just to ruin the Autobots' reputation with the government. We soon discover the trick. Mech has finally built their own transformer. It's Nemesis Prime, a remote-controlled robot piloted by Silas, who's sitting in a gaming chair enjoying the best real-life GTA simulator ever. Miko dubs the robot Nemesis Prime, and the hunt begins. Bumblebee finds the imposter and gets thrashed because Silas doesn't speak beat bop. Later, the original Optimus faces his copy in a mirror duel. The fight is very real steel, with Silas gaining the upper hand because he can't feel pain. Fowler, tired of being a punching bag, invades the mech base and goes hand-to-hand with Silas while the bots scrap outside. Optimus brings the roof down on Nemesis, and Fowler buys enough time for Silas to be crushed by debris along with his toy. Victory for the good guys, right? Wrong. Mech recovers Silas's near-dead body and, in a bizarre sci-fi horror plot twist, hooks the guy up to break down's remains. Now the villain is alive and plugged into a Cybertronian body. We have an episode in the style of Law and Order, but with giant robots in the background. Agent Fowler is in the hot seat, undergoing a tense interrogation with General Bryce. The mood is grim because the military saw Optimus Prime attacking a base. Little do they know it was the mech imposter that's already scrap metal. Fowler has to sweat to explain that it wasn't the Autobot leader, but Nemesis Prime, a cheap copy made of human parts and stolen tech. The general isn't buying the story and questions everything, sounding like a boss looking for a reason to fire you. Fowler has to defend the whole team, and, in his nervousness, nearly lets slip that the civilian consultants helping the Autobots are actually 3 teenagers playing life on hard mode. He covers well, calling the kids specialists, and even has to explain that Unicron isn't a magical pony with a horn when the general hears unicorn. Fowler gives a recap of the dangers they've faced, citing Starscream's betrayal and Arachnid's madness. He defends Optimus as the hero of the story, even as Bryce threatens to haul the Autobots before a military tribunal. The argument only ends when Optimus Prime himself makes a VIP appearance at the office window, staring down the general like a benevolent Godzilla. This instantly convinces the military man, saving Fowler's skin and ensuring Team Prime stays active without the government on their backs.
I believe I have everything I need to make a persuasive case that Optimus Prime is indeed alive and well, and firmly on our side.
The Decepticon ship, the Nemesis, becomes the busiest place in the galaxy, looking like Times Square on New Year's Eve. Everyone has decided that today is the day to try and take down Megatron. First, we have Starscream, creating an army of clones of himself. It's that classic comedy setup where copies are sneaking through corridors Scooby-Doo style, bickering among themselves and trying to assassinate the boss without being seen. They even have a bizarre psychic link with the original. Meanwhile, Bulkhead wakes up lost inside the enemy ship with The Hangover vibe. He just wants to find an exit and warn the Autobots, but he bumps into one of Starscream's clones. With no patience for small talk, the big guy goes Hulk mode and simply obliterates the clone, thinking it was the real deal. Zero remorse, pure brutality. The party is complete when Arachnid arrives with her swarm of Insecticons, turning a stealth mission into a Call of Duty map. However, the giant bugs, who used to be level bosses, now drop faster than stormtroopers in a Star Wars shootout, being mowed down by Autobot fire and Megatron's troops. In the middle of this chaos, RC finally has her reckoning with Arachnid. The rivalry that spanned the season reaches its climax, but unlike Bulkhead's fury, RC decides to follow the Batman moral code. She defeats the spider villain, but instead of killing her, traps her in a stasis pod, leaving her enemy frozen like Han Solo and Carbonite. The episode delivers all-out war inside the ship, with betrayals, clumsy clones, and Megatron having the worst workday ever. Megatron is impatient with the broken Nemesis and decides to use a dangerous cheat code, infusing dark energon directly into the ship's core to speed up repairs. The idea seems brilliant, like putting nitrous in an old car, but the result is catastrophic. The ship doesn't just fix itself in minutes, it gains a mind of its own, in the vein of Skynet or HAL 9000. On the Autobot side, Optimus plans to use a spark extractor to finish the Decepticons once and for all, but as they get close, the living ship activates a stasis beam that freezes everyone. Optimus, Bumblebee, Bulkhead, they all become statues. Even Megatron isn't spared. The ship decides it doesn't need a pilot, electrocutes the Viacons, and puts Megatron and his crew into hibernation. Now, the Nemesis is flying solo, ignoring everyone and heading for relics in New York. Since the ship only detects Cybertronian tech, Fowler and the kids are the only hope. It's a classic infiltration mission where the humans have to save the superpowered robots. They invade the ship, but Fowler gets fried in the process. It's down to the kids. Jack realizes they need to drain the fuel to shut down the AI, but the lever is blocked by Megatron's frozen hand. The ship finally notices pests on board and sends a mechanical claw to eliminate Miko and Raph. In a stroke of genius, Jack baits the claw into hitting Megatron, knocking the villain over and pulling the lever with him. The system reboots, the dumb ship returns to normal, and the bots wake up. Ratchet appears just in time, delivers a cinematic punch to knock out, and rescues Jack before Megatron can turn him into confetti.
That's an opinion.
In the end, they get the data they wanted, but the ship is still drifting toward Manhattan, and Megatron is awake and furious. Team Prime decides to play Risk and spread their troops thin to snag 4 Iacon relics at the same time. The first stop is New York City, in the subway tunnels, the perfect place to find giant rats and apparently alien robots. RC, Bumblebee, Jack, and Miko head underground with a Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles vibe. On the villain side, Megatron sends Knockout. Without the late breakdown, the vain medic is forced to work with an Insecticon, which for him is like riding in a limo with a wet dog. In the tunnels, the kids bump into Vogel, a subway maintenance worker who believes in everything from mole men to the Illuminati. Miko, ever the hustler, spins a yarn and they hitch a ride on his train. The brawl breaks out when Knockout and his pet corner RC and B. The Insecticon is brutal, but RC uses the environment to her advantage. She kicks the beast into the third rail and he fries instantly. Bug barbecue. Amidst the chaos, Bumblebee accidentally activates the relic and discovers it's a phase shifter. Basically, he gains Kitty's powers and becomes intangible. Vogel's train passes right through him, but hits Knockout square in the face. The Decepticon survives, but his precious paint job looks like a cheese grater, and he flees in horror to touch up his finish. To wrap things up, Fowler promotes Vogel to Deputy of Interstellar Relations, just to keep the secret and keep the guy happy. We swap the New York sewers for the freezing cold of Antarctica, in a very The Thing kind of vibe. Megatron dispatches Dreadwing to fetch the second relic, but Starscream, who was bored in exile trying to perform self-surgery, decides to snoop and heads there too. He arrives on a flying scooter, but is quickly captured by Dreadwing and made a prisoner. Optimus Prime enters the fray to recover the item, turning the mission into a three-way brawl in the snow. The plot twist here is that Optimus and Starscream are forced to collaborate momentarily to clear out a human base where the relic is hidden. It's the old "the enemy of my enemy" routine. When they finally find the prize, Starscream shows why he's the king of backstabbing. He dons the relic, which is the Apex armor. Now he looks like an indestructible Hulkbuster. Not even a bomb can dent him. The situation gets so critical that Optimus and Dreadwing have to pull a temporary truce. Since they can't pierce the armor, they use basic physics. Optimus distracts the traitor while Dreadwing blows the ice floor out from under him, Wile E. Coyote style. Starscream sinks into the freezing ocean, too heavy to fly, but alive thanks to the armor. With no relic for anyone, Dreadwing promises to kill Optimus next time, and everyone goes their separate ways. While Optimus enjoys a rare moment in the snow, Ratchet decides to leave the lab to team up with Wheeljack. It's that classic buddy cop dynamic, think Bad Boys, where the grumpy doctor has to put up with the reckless samurai. They head out on the jackhammer in search of the third relic, but soon realize they have company. Soundwave, the most silent and terrifying Decepticon of them all, who deploys Laserbeak to intercept them. A Top Gun-worthy aerial dogfight ensues, but the result is disastrous. Both ships go down. On the ground, Ratchet has a stroke of genius. Instead of blowing Laserbeak to bits, Wheeljack's standard plan A, they decide to use the drone as a Trojan horse. The plan is to plant a virus in the bird to hack the Nemesis database once it returns home. To make the plan work, Wheeljack needs to distract the bird's master. He finds Soundwave, who has already unearthed the relic, the Resonance Blaster, essentially a sonic dubstep gun. The fight is brutal, with Soundwave using his Dr. Octopus-style tentacles. Wheeljack manages to crack the villain's visor with a headbutt, but ends up taking a sonic blast at point-blank range, knocking him out of the fight. Meanwhile, Ratchet plays a high-stakes hacking minigame, pinning Laserbeak down while Raph remotely uploads the virus. It's a close call, but it works. Soundwave arrives, rescues his infected pet, and leaves thinking he's won, taking the virus straight into Megatron's systems. Ratchet rescues his friend, and they head back to base, feeling like hackers out of the Matrix. But the celebration is short-lived. The ground bridge opens and Bulkhead collapses in the middle of the room, smoking and utterly destroyed, leaving everyone in a state of panic. We jump back in time to understand why Bulkhead looked like ground meat in the previous episode. He was dispatched on a solo mission to Ecuador, into a volcanic jungle setting with a heavy Jurassic Park vibe. The problem? Megatron sent the elite guard, the Insecticons, led by Hardshell, a giant beetle who, unlike the others, can speak and is pure brutality. Bulkhead finds the relic, but it's the worst prize imaginable, toxin. It's basically radioactive toxic waste, a Cybertronian kryptonite that melts them from the inside out. Like a true 80s action hero, Bulkhead decides he has to destroy this filth before Megatron turns it into a biological weapon. What follows is a marathon of suffering. Bulkhead hauls the poison, growing weaker and dizzier by the second. While being hunted by the Insect Squad, Agent Fowler stays on the comms, acting as a Rocky Balboa-style motivational coach, keeping the giant from getting up. The climax happens at the mouth of an active volcano. Cornered and poisoned, Bulkhead uses his last ounce of strength to turn the fight into a Royal Rumble. He uses the toxin as a brass knuckle to KO the minions, and, in a suicidal maneuver, knocks Hardshell and the relic straight into the lava. It looked like a victory, but bad weeds grow tall. Hardshell emerges from the lava charred and fires a cowardly shot into Bulkhead's back just before he crosses the portal. That's how our favorite warrior ended up unconscious at base, his fate hanging in the balance. The team returns to base riding high like they just won the Super Bowl until they see Bulkhead mangled on the floor. The mood shifts instantly into a tense episode of Grey's Anatomy, with Ratchet rushing in with defibrillators and Miko spiraling into a panic, blaming herself for not being there to help. Wheeljack arrives, and seeing his partner in that state, he ignores any of Optimus Prime's pacifist speeches. He goes full John Wick. He wants revenge, and he wants it now. Optimus tries to hold him back, saying retaliation isn't the way, but the Autobot samurai bails. The surprise? Miko, tired of sitting on the sidelines, sneaks onto his ship. She offers a deal. She'll tell him who did it if he lets her join the hunt. The unlikely duo starts raising hell in the Energon mines to draw Hardshell out. Meanwhile, on the Decepticon ship, an actual bar fight breaks out between the Insecticons and the Viacons, with Knockout getting pistol furious because they scratched his paint. Wheeljack finally gets the 1v1 he wanted. He calls Hardshell out for a showdown on a cliffside, but the Beetle is a tank and starts using the Autobot as a punching bag. Just when it looks like game over for Wheeljack, Miko decides she won't be the damsel in distress. She takes control of the ship and fires a missile right into Hardshell's face. Fatality. The monster explodes, and Wheeljack survives to tell the tale. They return to base with a moral victory, but reality hits hard. Bulkhead is alive, but the damage is severe, and he may never be the same. Bulkhead's recovery is a physical therapy nightmare. He tries to move, but he's locked up, and Miko, with the patience of a hyperactive monk, starts pushing him too hard to stay motivated. The mood sours, she snaps, and walks out. RC follows to play therapist, and it's time for the sit-down, let me tell you a story moment. Flashback activated. We return to Cybertron, where RC and the late Cliffjumper have been captured. They're taken to the lab of Shockwave, a one-eyed Decepticon with zero sense of humor. He plugs a cable into RC's mind to steal intel, discovering that Optimus is heading to Earth. But RC isn't one to wait for a rescue. She finds a way to break free, saves Cliffjumper, and the two become a buddy cop action duo. Think robotic lethal weapon. Their plan? Blow up the space bridge Shockwave is building. They sabotage the whole thing, but the giant Cyclops shows up to crash the party. The fight is intense until RC lands a critical shot right in Shockwave's eye. With everything exploding behind them in a Michael Bay-style shot, they jump through the portal and land on Earth, sealing the partnership we saw at the start of the series. Back in the present, the story helps Miko understand that trauma is part of the package, and the two end up watching the sunset together, united by the memory of broken friends. A pod crashes on Earth, and the Autobots head out expecting trouble, which is exactly what they find. Decepticons and Insecticons everywhere. Things get hairy until a fast blur streaks through, blowing everything up and saving the day. This is Smokescreen, the team's new intern. The kid is talented, but he's got that college freshman energy, trying way too hard to impress the boss, Optimus. He tells war stories from Cybertron and gains the leader's trust. The one not feeling it is Bulkhead. The big guy is benched, feeling useless because of his leg, and seeing this rookie shine is like Woody watching Buzz Lightyear arrive in Andy's room in Toy Story. Jealousy hits hard. Meanwhile, Starscream is hunting for Red Energon and scores the Apex armor, becoming an evil Iron Man, only much tougher. He becomes so OP, overpowered in that turbocharged tin can, that not even Optimus can handle him 1v1. Smokescreen, ignoring orders like any good young rebel protagonist, grabs the phase shifter, a relic that lets you walk through walls, and joins the fray. He literally phases through the armor and kicks Starscream out of it, using a real-life, no-clip cheat code. The Decepticon detonates the Energon meteor so no one can have it, but manages to flee with a small shard. In the end, Smokescreen is officially welcomed to the team with a celebration, while Bulkhead limps off with a literal cartoon rain cloud over his head, feeling replaced by the newer model. If you thought Silas was gone, think again. The mech leader wakes up fused to the body of the late Breakdown, giving off major RoboCop vibes, but totally psychotic. He eliminates his own henchmen and heads to the Decepticon ship, introducing himself as Silas. Megatron looks at him with disgust, but accepts his peace offering, a military satellite capable of firing orbital lasers, a compact version of the Death Star. The one who's absolutely livid is Knockout, who sees his former partner's body being used by a human parasite. The villain's plan kicks off, and Soundwave uses the satellite to play target practice with the Autobots. Their only hope is Raph, but the tech genius is facing his greatest enemy, his mother, who grounded him for bad grades. While the Autobots dodge lasers like they're in a Michael Bay movie, Silas is sent to eliminate the boy. Then comes the heavy showdown. Bulkhead shows up to protect the kids and discovers his old enemy, Silas, is now piloting the body of his old rival, Breakdown. It's an inception of villains. Bulkhead is still slow and takes a beating, needing rookie Smokescreen's help to keep from becoming scrap metal. Meanwhile, Raph manages to hack the satellite and divert it just as his mom enters the room, pulling the classic study group excuse. The satellite burns up in the atmosphere, and Silas returns to the ship defeated. Megatron, who doesn't tolerate failure, decides the human is useless. He hands Silas over to Knockout as a gift. Knockout turns on a stun weapon with a sadistic grin, ready to begin a very painful experiment. Instant, brutal karma.
Megatron, I'm here to serve you.
Smokescreen thinks he's auditioning for Fast and Furious, tearing up Nevada's roads and totally ignoring Bumblebee's pleas to slow down. His recklessness backfires when a trucker snaps a photo of the bots transforming, leaking their identities to the internet. Optimus Prime, playing the responsible father figure, decides the rookie needs to learn to live among humans and dumps him on Jack. The mission? Teach traffic rules to a hyperactive alien. It's exactly as fun as it sounds. To make matters worse, they cross paths with Vince, the school bully who looks like he stepped ripped out of an 80s teen movie. The guy throws a burger at them, and Smokescreen convinces Jack to get revenge, resulting in a car covered in food and a lecture from Arcee. Meanwhile, Megatron finds a relic in China, but it's not just anything. It's the Star Saber, a legendary sword stuck in a stone, King Arthur style. The Decepticon leader tries everything to pull the sword, but it won't budge an inch, rejecting him completely. The Autobots fall for a Megatron feint and chase a fake signal, but Smokescreen and Jack find the real location. The rookie ignores the danger, invades the dig site, only to be captured immediately after. When Optimus finally arrives, things get serious. He takes the Star Saber for himself and unleashes absurd power. Prime slices through an entire mountain like it's butter and sends a wave of energy that nearly downs the Nemesis. Megatron retreats with his tail between his legs, seeing the tables have turned. Back at base, the sword glows and receives an intergalactic call. Alpha Trion is on the line. Optimus Prime receives a spiritual call directly from Alpha Trion, who acts like that RPG NPC who only appears to give you the main quest. The goal now, find 4 Omega keys scattered across the globe. It feels a bit like one of those repetitive World of Warcraft fetch quests we've seen before with the Iacon project, but now the promise is that these items can restore Cybertron. It starts to feel like the whole war was just one big galactic scavenger hunt. Meanwhile, the mood at base is heavy. Smokescreen tries to apologize to Arcee for putting Jack at risk, but she's giving him the cold shoulder treatment. The dynamic only shifts when the rookie seemingly dies on a mission. But wait, false alarm. Smokescreen returns in one piece, and Arcee forgives him instantly, resolving the drama faster than a Full House finale. But the real highlight is Megatron, who decided to take body modification to the extreme. The Decepticon leader went for a Frankenstein's monster meets Bucky Barnes cosplay, and literally grafted the arm of a deceased Prime onto his own body. With this macabre upgrade, he's able to forge the Dark Star Saber, a goth version of Optimus's sword. The fight between the two is a visual spectacle of lasers and sparks, looking like a Star Wars duel with an infinite budget. The impact is so great that Megatron's new sword shatters Optimus's Star Saber. The villain gets so hyped on power he delivers a super cliche speech, complete with lightning in the background, doing his best Disney villain impression. Megatron is feeling like the king of the world, while Knockout begs for a chance to shine. The Decepticon medic borrows a sonic weapon from Soundwave and heads out. On the hero side, Smokescreen's ego is bigger than Kanye West's, convinced he's the chosen one, but Arcee and Bumblebee are the ones sent on the mission, only to be humiliated by Knockout. The stylish villain uses a shroud and the sonic gun to take out both Autobots and steal the second Omega key without breaking a sweat, while Smokescreen complains about being benched. Starscream, now a free agent, preps Red Energon, a substance that promises to make him as fast as the Flash, though production is slow and limited. Meanwhile, Bulkhead tries to teach the rookie patience during a mission against Dreadwing in a forest. The Decepticon turned the place into a minefield, Predator style, but Bulkhead is smarter. He notices a bomb stuck to his back and returns to sender, knocking the big guy out. Smokescreen finds the third Omega key but celebrates too early. He gets a thwack to the head and blacks out. When he wakes up, the key is gone, courtesy of an opportunistic Starscream hiding in the brush. Back at base, the tension is high. Smokescreen, frustrated by failing again and getting lectured by Arcee, acts like a misunderstood teenager and flees into the desert. Bad idea. Soundwave deciphers the final coordinates and discovers that the fourth key isn't an object, it's an image of Smokescreen himself. The rookie, now isolated and off the comms, becomes an easy target for Laserbeak and is abducted by Soundwave before the Autobots can save him. Smokescreen wakes up with total horror movie vibes, strapped to an operating table with Knockout playing the mad surgeon. The Decepticon doctor discovers the fourth Omega key is literally inside the rookie. Instead of using a saw-style blade, he uses the phase shifter to pull the object out without leaving a scar. Meanwhile, Megatron decides to hack Smokescreen's brain with a cortical psychic patch to find out what the keys do and where the Autobot base is located. But Smokescreen isn't just a pretty face. He seizes a distraction, recovers the phase shifter, and leaves Knockout fused into a wall like Han Solo in Carbonite.
Well, aren't you the clever one?
The kid turns into Mission Impossible's Ethan Hunt. He recovers his key, steals another from the vault, and leaps off the ship. Megatron tries to intercept him mid-air, but the Autobot phases through the ground and escapes. Back at base, the celebration is short-lived. Starscream calls offering the last key in exchange for his T-Cod. It's an obvious trap, but Optimus decides to risk it, while the team goes to meet Starscream in the forest, who turns out to be just a dead clone. The real villain invades the base using Red Energon. He's so fast he looks like Quicksilver in X-Men, Days of Future Past. He blurs past the bots left behind, loots the vault, and steals all 4 Omega keys. Once the speed wears off, he bails, leaving Optimus looking like the rug was pulled out from under him, and the worst happens. Starscream arrives on the Decepticon ship, basically doing a job interview to rejoin the team, offering the 4 Omega keys as his resume. Megatron, suspicious as ever, decides to do a full background check. He hooks Starscream up to the psychic patch to watch the traitor's memories on a giant screen, like a humiliation reality show. It's an awkward cinema session. Megatron watches every single time Starscream tried to kill him, his failed clone plots, and that disastrous partnership with Arachnid. The Jet tries to make lame excuses, saying he was out of his mind or just hungry, but the Decepticon leader just enjoys the fail compilation. Knockout, watching from the side, starts breaking a sweat, terrified his own dirty laundry will pop up on screen. Things get serious when the memory of what happened to Skyquake plays. Dreadwing, watching silently, sees his brother turned into a zombie and abandoned in another dimension. That's the last straw. Megatron, satisfied with Starscream's submission and totally ignoring his current second-in-command's feelings, accepts the traitor back. While the villains celebrate getting the band back together, Dreadwing leaves the room devastated. Outside in the rain, he lets out a scream of fury and betrayal that would make a soap opera villain jealous. His loyalty is officially broken. Things get personal for Dreadwing, who goes into John Wick mode to avenge his brother's death. He ignores the chain of command and goes after Starscream with blood in his eyes, turning the ship into an internal war zone. The problem? Megatron doesn't do insubordination and steps into the middle of the fight to set things straight. Here comes a bizarre corporate HR decision. Megatron has to choose between the loyal but vengeful employee and the backstabber who spent months trying to usurp him. Incredibly, the Decepticon leader decides to delete Dreadwing right then and there. It's that classic toxic boss moment where he fires the hard worker to keep the incompetent sycophant around. Dreadwing dies for his principles, while Starscream gains another extra life, like a villain who just refuses to be written out of the show. But Dreadwing's death wasn't totally in vain. In one last act, and a massive plot convenience, he leaves the Forge of Solus Prime in the Autobots' lap. This is essentially the legendary loot the team was missing in their inventory. With this tool, the heroes can finally fix the space bridge to reach Cybertron, and as a bonus, they use the hammer to reforge Optimus's Starsaber, which comes back brand new. It seems the whole broken sword crisis was solved in a snap, all because Alpha Trion chose to trust the prophecy and let the protagonist handle the mess at the final hour. Back on Cybertron, we have a classic Mexican standoff. The Decepticons have captured the 3 human kids, and Megatron lays it out. Either the Autobots hand over the Omega keys, or their favorite pets become space dust. Optimus, with his hero's heart of gold, agrees. A tense hostage negotiation follows, and each Autobot hands over their key to save their human partner. But Megatron doesn't play fair. With keys in hand, he activates the Omega Lock and aims a trans-dimensional beam directly at Earth. His plan isn't just to rebuild his home, it's to turn our planet into a mechanical Cybertron, killing everyone in the process. Very much like General Zod's plan in Man of Steel. Seeing that diplomacy has failed, Optimus draws the Starsaber and goes berserker mode. He slices Megatron's new arm off and, in a heavy-hitting decision, destroys the Omega Lock himself. That's it. To save Earth, he condemns Cybertron to stay dead. The crew escapes back to base on Earth, but there's no time to breathe. Megatron has built a massive fortress, Darkmount, right in their backyard in Nevada. The villain is done hiding and launches a full-scale assault. With no way out, Optimus orders the team to split up and flee through the ground bridge to different corners of the country, while he stays behind to destroy the controls and ensure they aren't followed. The Nemesis fires a massive fusion cannon that obliterates the entire base. The episode ends on an Avengers: Infinity War. Note, the heroes have lost, they are scattered, and Optimus's arm is seen buried under the rubble. The Decepticons are scavenging the ruins of the Autobot base, picking up souvenirs and capturing Wheeljack. But the main prize is missing. Where is Optimus's body? It turns out Smokescreen was the MVP of the round. He used the phase shifter, Kitty style, to pull the boss out before the blast. Now he's hiding in a cave trying to keep a broken Optimus alive, while the Autobot leader insists the rookie should flee and save himself. Megatron is feeling like the master of the universe and decides to level the city of Jasper with his fusion cannons just to show who's boss. But luckily Fowler had already evacuated the area. The Autobot team is scattered across the map, living out a survival road movie. Bumblebee painted his chassis to avoid being recognized on the road while traveling with Raph, while Bulkhead and Miko try to link up with the other wreckers. Jack and RC are on their own, and the Kit makes the classic horror movie mistake. He tries to use his cell phone to text his mom. Soundwave, the universe's ultimate digital stalker, tracks the signal instantly. A ship appears to turn the duo into Swiss cheese, forcing RC to improvise an explosive trap at a gas station to escape. To top it all off, or rather, to add to the despair, Knockout returns from a trip to Cybertron with some heavy reinforcement. Shockwave, the one-eyed scientist, has arrived on Earth, and the hero's situation has never been worse. Megatron, of course, loves the news and promotes Shockwave to Science Commander, leaving Starscream with the face of someone who just got replaced by a newer model. And to make the jealousy worse, the newcomer brought a pet in his luggage, a Predicon, basically a giant mechanical dragon. While the villains celebrate, the Autobots are at rock bottom. Raph hacks the web and discovers Ratchet has become a hermit in a scrapyard. When Bee and Raph get there, they find the Doctor grumpier than Squidward, with zero hope for victory. Meanwhile, Wheeljack has been captured and is about to be executed in a lava pit. But this guy is too slick. He grabs a Viacon soldier, uses the poor soul as a flying surfboard, and escapes in style. However, Starscream, in a rare show of intelligence, planted a tracker on him. Wheeljack reunites with Bulkhead and Miko, but soon realizes it's a trap. He uses a decoy log to fool the hunters and blows them all up. But the real twist happens when Jack and RC stumble upon a mysterious ship. Out comes Ultra Magnus, the most hardline military commander in the universe, who's here to bring order to the chaos and get the band back together. The Predicon has been unleashed and it's got a scent for blood, or rather, Energon. The target is Wheeljack. Meanwhile, Smokescreen decides to play Mission Impossible. Using his phasing device, he infiltrates Megatron's ship, passes by a collection of bizarre trophies, including a frozen arachnid, and steals the forge of Solus Prime, the magic hammer capable of creating or fixing anything. In the desert, the wreckers try to blow up a mine to signal their allies, but the one who answers the call is Shockwave's dragon. The fight is totally lopsided. The beast tanks grenades, cannon fire, and even being buried alive. Just as the Autobots are about to become scrap metal, Ultra Magnus arrives in his ship for an aerial rescue. A mid-air brawl ensues, with the dragon trying to rip the ship apart with brute force, but Magnus maneuvers through a canyon and manages to bring the monster down. The team finally reunites at the makeshift scrapyard base. The roster is almost full, systems are online, and even Jack's mom showed up. Hope is back, except in the cave where Optimus is hiding. Smokescreen arrives all smiles with the hammer to heal the boss, but Optimus refuses. He says the forge's power is limited and must be saved for the Omega Law, and then he drops the bombshell. His time is up. Optimus is passing the torch and wants the rookie, Smokescreen, to be the new Prime. With Optimus still on the sidelines in spectator mode, Ultra Magnus takes the captain's armband. He arrives with the energy of a hard-nosed general, leading a suicide mission against the Darkmount Fortress to take out the fusion cannon. He isn't playing around and trades blows with Megatron like it's payday. Basically, he's that substitute teacher who commands more respect than the regular one. While the chaos unfolds, the dragon Predicon is dispatched faster than a side character in a horror movie, which would make any pet owner upset. Shockwave is a bit shook, but keeps his stoic villain persona, walking through rubble and explosions without even blinking. breathtaking, Terminator style. The level of cool on this Cyclops is absurd, but the climax happens on a spiritual plane. Optimus Prime practically kicks the bucket and ends up in robotic limbo chatting with Alpha Trion, giving off total Harry Potter meeting Dumbledore at the train station vibes. Prime is ready to accept game over and join the Allspark, but Smokescreen refuses to lose his mentor. The rookie grabs the Forge of Solace and decides to perform a forced resuscitation. The result? Optimus comes back from the dead looking like he took every protein supplement on Cybertron. He emerges giant, with new armor and flight capabilities. His return is so overpowered that he destroys the Dark Mount Tower in seconds, making it look like a video game tutorial on easy mode. What was the ultimate symbol of Decepticon dominance becomes scrap in the blink of an eye, proving that the protagonist's plot armor is the strongest weapon in the galaxy. Fowler shows up at the base driving a new military truck that looks like it came straight out of Mad Max, ready for the apocalypse. While Optimus approves of the new toy, the team morale is worse than a bad homeowners association meeting. Wheeljack, the rebel without a cause, starts playing grenade toss with Bulkhead and nearly turns Miko into a pancake. Ultra Madness, who is basically the fun police, gives a lecture on discipline and hierarchy. The tension is so high that Wheeljack only sticks around because he doesn't have a ride. Optimus heads out to investigate a cave with his new jetpack and discovers the problem is bigger than they imagined. He finds Insecticons excavating giant bones, the remains of Predicons. Essentially, Shockwave is playing Jurassic Park and wants to clone an army of extinct beasts to hunt the Autobots. The team splits up. Magnus assembles the Braveheart squad and heads to Scotland with the Wreckers, carrying the Forge of Solace Prime merely as a giant sledgehammer since the magic ran out. In Texas, the situation is handled by Optimus, Bumblebee, and Smokescreen. They run into Shockwave hauling a fossil. The scientist flees, but Soundwave appears to perform some aerial acrobatics. In a scene straight out of an action movie, Bumblebee manages to rip the bone right out of the enemy's hand. Optimus goes into a dramatic dive to catch the falling prize, but Soundwave opens a portal in midair, video game style, and teleports the fossil straight to Megatron's hand on the ship. The villains escape with the DNA, and Megatron decides to keep Shockwave protected in the lab while sending Starscream to do the dirty work of a gravedigger. Remember that massive dragon? He thaws out in the Arctic just like Captain America, and heads back to the Decepticon base with a hunger for destruction. Megatron, with his impeccable people management skills, tasks Starscream with taming the beast. The second-in-command dons the Apex armor, which is basically an invincibility cheat code, and tries his hand at how to train your dragon. The result? He ends up being used as a chew toy by the beast, who couldn't care less about his authority. Over in Scotland, the Autobots' mission turns into pure chaos. Wheeljack continues to completely ignore Ultra Magnus's orders and reveals he even brought Miko along as a stowaway in his trunk. Before Magnus can have a total breakdown, the Predicon arrives to turn the cave into a pizza oven. Cornered, and with no cell service, Wheeljack decides that detonating a grenade in a confined space is a brilliant idea. Spoiler alert, it only made things worse and nearly buried everyone alive. Miko escapes through a fissure to call for help, and runs right into Starscream outside. The Decepticon, making the classic arrogant villain mistake, had taken off the Apex armor to gloat. Miko seizes the chance, steals the suit, and becomes the team version of Iron Man. The Predicon emerges from the rubble unscathed, receives a call from Megatron, and leaves with the bone he wanted. Starscream tries to get his armor back, but takes a humiliating beatdown from the human girl. Despite the moral victory, the team finally fractures. Fed up with Magnus's stiff military style, Wheeljack decides to go solo and leaves the group. The Wreckers reunion tour ended before it even started. The atmosphere at the Autobot base is heavier than Megatron after an all-you-can-eat pizza buffet. Wheeljack returns from Scotland empty-handed, leaving Ultra Magnus's team behind and full of attitude. While Raph plays Indiana Jones and discovers a Predicon fossil in a museum, Fowler decides to play the gallant hero and invites Jack's mom June to come along and retrieve the relic. It looks like the start of a bad rom-com, but it turns into an action flick when Knockout shows up to ruin the date and kidnaps the two lovebirds. On the Decepticon warship, Starscream is still trying to boss the Predicon around, but the creature respects him about as much as a cat respects a new sofa. The beast not only nearly takes the jet's head off with its tail, but later proves it's smarter than half the cast by accessing the ship's computer to study its own species. Total Planet of the Apes vibes, just with robot dragons. Wheeljack and RC set off for a rescue in a sequence straight out of Fast and Furious. Knockout is fleeing with the hostages on a moving train, leading to a classic modern Western chase. Wheeljack finally admits he was a jerk to Bulkhead and decides to play as a team. They pull off a Mission Impossible style maneuver. Knockout escapes with the bone, but the Autobots save June and Fowler. In the end, Jack's mom is safe and sound. Wheeljack makes peace with Bulkhead, and the Decepticons gain another piece of their Jurassic puzzle. But the real highlight is the big dragon reading the Decepticon Wikipedia, proving the danger is only escalating. It's a stormy night on the Nemesis, the perfect setting for Starscream and Knockout to play Frankenstein. Jealous of Shockwave, they decide to create a super soldier using Silas, who is trapped inside Breakdown's body. Their genius idea? Mix synthetic energon with dark energon. The result is obvious to anyone who's ever seen a horror movie.
It's alive!
Silas turns into an energy vampire thirsty for blood, or rather, robot juice. The situation hits the Walking Dead levels of out of control in seconds. Zombie Silas escapes, bites the Viacon soldiers, and starts an epidemic inside the ship. Knockout, who clearly watched too many B-movies at drive-ins, tries to give survival tips, but aiming for the head doesn't solve anything. They even try to hide the mess from the boss, but Megatron senses the strange ripples in his own dark energon, and chaos is unleashed. Guided by hunger, Zombie Silas ends up opening Arachnid's stasis pod. The Black Widow wakes up, kills the failed Frankenstein, and finally ends the human villain's career. But there's no time to celebrate. She regains mental control of the Insecticons and tries to take over the ship. That's when Soundwave, the eternal employee of the month, steps in. Without saying a word, he opens a space bridge and dispatches Arachnid and her insect army straight to a deserted moon of Cybertron. The catch? In the final scene, we discover Arachnid was bitten by Silas. Now exiled and a vampire, she begins to drain her own subjects. A happy ending? Not. Shockwave is lying low in his secret lab, breeding an army of beasts Jurassic Park style. Except the main dino isn't just an animal. He transforms, he talks, and he leaves Starscream looking like a fool after the villain tries to act like a circus tamer. The monster names himself Predicon and is having a full-blown existential crisis, wanting to lead his own kind. Megatron, smelling a mutiny, decides it's time to wipe out the clones before they become a problem. But of course, he's going to frame the Autobots for it. Meanwhile, back at the hero's base, the mood is tense. Ultra Magnus is acting like that annoying boss who clocks your coffee breaks, and Wheeljack can't stand it. Optimus returns to try and unite the squad, but they quickly fall into the Decepticons' trap. They raid the lab, Shockwave flees, and he blows up the cloning tanks to destroy the evidence. Predicon arrives, sees the clone barbecue, and hits Hulk levels of rage. The fight turns into a massacre. Predicon thrashes Ultra Magnus and Wheeljack like they're ragdolls. Magnus tries to use the Forge of Solus Prime, but the big dragon steps on his hand and snaps the magic hammer in half, destroying their most powerful weapon.
Prepare to perish.
Optimus flies in to save the day at the last second and gets everyone out of there. In the end, with Ultra Magnus getting a Captain Hook-style prosthetic and learning his lesson, Optimus gives a motivational speech a la Dominic Toretto. We aren't an army, we're a family. But the moral victory is short-lived because, in the rubble, Megatron discovers cyber matter capable of creating worlds. But he needs to rebuild the Omega Lock to cyberform Earth and Cybertron simultaneously. The problem is, the formula is unstable, so the brilliant plan is to kidnap Ratchet, basically the Walter White of robot science, to fix the chemistry. At the base, while Ultra Magnus debuts his new pirate hand, things get awkward when he makes a bad joke about voice boxes and Bumblebee walks off offended. Luck seems to turn when Optimus manages to take down and capture Soundwave, the most loyal and dangerous Decepticon in the franchise. The interrogation is bizarre. The guy only responds with remixes of other people's voices, blasts a deafening sound like a dubstep concert, and wipes his own memory right in front of everyone so he won't snitch, dropping the legendary line, Soundwave superior. He basically formats his own hard drive and just sits there, deactivated, but it was all a masterstroke. While Optimus takes the heavy hitters to the South Pole to stop the theft of a particle accelerator and goes toe-to-toe with Predicon again, who is thirsty for revenge, the base is left vulnerable. Laserbeak follows Agent Fowler, infiltrates the HQ, and reboots Soundwave. The evil DJ wakes up in John Wick mode, beats down Smokescreen, Bulkhead, and Fowler without breaking a sweat, and goes straight for the real target, Ratchet. Security is blown, and now the team medic is all alone against the monster. Optimus is getting his spark handed to him in the fight against Predicon, who decides to escalate, turning into a Game of Thrones-style dragon, and nearly melting the Autobot leader into scrap metal. The tide turns when Megatron calls his pet back to base because stealing equipment is more important than finishing off the hero. After the dust settles, the Autobots clear the area, but the outlook is grim. The villains escaped with the particle collider and worse, took Ratchet as a parting gift. On the Nemesis, Megatron is playing the toxic boss. He wants Ratchet to finish the synthetic energon formula to rebuild Cybertron and Earth at the same time. The Doctor tries to resist, but Megatron plays dirty and threatens the kids. Speaking of threats, Starscream leads a Top Gun-style aerial strike against the Autobots' hangar. He bombs the place with glee, only to find out later the humans painted a different letter on the roof and he blew up the wrong building. Total Looney Tunes level trolling. While Megatron gives a tour of the ship showing off an almost ready Omega lock, Team Prime cooks up a MacGyver plan. Smokescreen kept a piece of Laserbeak, and Raph builds a drone called Chip to track the signal to the enemy ship. But the pressure is on for Ratchet. Seeing that Megatron is one step away from getting everything he wants, he reluctantly agrees to complete the formula, like a robotic Walter White, to try and save everyone's skin. The little drone Chip blasts off into space like a NASA launch, with Optimus hot on its trail trying to follow the signal. On the ship, the tension in the lab is palpable. Ratchet is playing mental chess and takes advantage of the fact that Knockout is annoyed at being demoted to Shockwave's intern to steal a DNA sample. The Doctor completes the formula, but in a die-hard moment of heroism, he tries to delete the data, sets the lab on fire, and attempts to escape through the smoke. The plan goes half right and half terrible. Starscream intercepts the drone and blows up the tracker, leaving Optimus lost in the clouds without GPS. On the ship, Megatron catches Ratchet in the hallway and learns that Knockout managed to save the formula from the fire. As punishment, the Decepticon leader throws Ratchet into Predaking's cage to be used as a snap, but Ratchet uses his best weapon, Gossip. He tells Predaking that it was Megatron who ordered the hit on all his clones.
Mind? Megatron fears you, and any like you.
The dragon goes ballistic, Hulk style, and starts tearing the ship apart. In the chaos, Ratchet drops the shields and sends the coordinates to the team. Meanwhile, a heavy-duty UFC match breaks out between Predaking and Megatron. The villain takes a beating, but wins through trickery, opening the airlock and ejecting the dragon into the sky. Now, Megatron unsheathes the Dark Star Saber and braces himself, because the Autobot cavalry has just arrived for the final battle. The final invasion begins with a Mission Impossible vibe. While the team takes the ship, Smokescreen gets distracted, decides to go on a side quest, and runs off to recover the Star Saber. On the upper deck, it's the heavyweight rematch, Optimus vs. Megatron, featuring sword duels and broken jetpacks. Ultra Magnus's team is captured by Soundwave, but that's when the kids shine. Jack and Raph brainstorm a genius plan, and Miko appears wearing the Apex armor, looking like Tony Stark in the Hulkbuster, to clear the bridge. They use a portal trick to banish Soundwave to the Shadow Zone, trapping the silent DJ in a parallel dimension forever. The battle heats up at the Omega Lock. Smokescreen tosses the sword to Bumblebee, but Megatron isn't playing around and guns down our yellow scout. B dies and falls into the Omega Lock's energy. The mood gets heavier than the end of Bambi, with everyone in shock. But the script has a legendary plot twist. The energy revives Bumblebee and fixes his voice box. The Autobot surges out of nowhere, shouts Megatron, and runs the villain through with the Star Saber.
Megatron!
Megatron goes dark and falls toward Earth. Starscream and Shockwave flee in an escape pod cramped like a NYC subway at rush hour, and Knockout tries to switch sides at the last second, only to get punched out by Miko. Optimus uses the ship to restore Cybertron. Back on Earth, it's the saddest goodbye since Furious 7. Ratchet decides to stay on the planet as a guardian, while Optimus and the rest of the team head home, leaving the humans behind and ending the war on a high note.